There are a few of you here tonight that I don't know. So I'm James Goodman. I'm your MC tonight. The rest of you, it's nice to see you, and to all of you, welcome. Have a think about these questions. In the world today, are there some things that there's a desperate need for improvement in our nation and in our local communities? Are there some real improvements, some huge improvements that need to be made? And is there help required for that? And for tonight, is there a benefit to us in doing some good?
Thank you, James, and thank you to Goodman Wealth and the Goodman family for inviting us all here. I want to begin by acknowledging that we're meeting on the traditional lands of the Turrbal people, and I pay my respects to First Nation elders past and present. The term philanthropy is a really beautiful one. It's two Greek terms, of course, philos meaning love and anthropos meaning people. So love of people is at the heart of the act of philanthropy. And these two families on stage with me have made philanthropy very central to their lives and to the meaning that they give and get. And I think as this conversation progresses, you'll see that it's very much a two-way experience, that it's not simply a giving of financial aid or of time, but it's a mutual relationship. John, how did a woman called Betty help you change the way you thought about money?
Well, a long time ago, a client of mine called Betty, I was helping her with a will. And when the will came back from the solicitor, there was a new beneficiary added, me. And I was gobsmacked. So when I regained my composure, I rang Betty up and I said, look, Betty, I can't be a beneficiary in the will, but you've named a number of charities. Can I add a charity? And she readily agreed. I can't tell you the pleasure that gave me. This frugal old accountant had discovered the pleasure of giving.
The thing that really started me realising how important philanthropy was, and also how it comes from unexpected places, was that we had a couple of Lions who came down from the north part of Queensland to visit our laboratory at a time when we were just getting started, if you like, in Brisbane. And they brought their daughter along, and she talked with us about the work that we were doing. And they went away, and on the way out they said, look, we're going to leave you a little bit of money for the work. And I thought that was very nice. And they gave me an envelope, and I didn't want to open it in front of them, obviously. That would have been bad manners. I didn't know what was inside it, but when we opened it up, there was a cheque for $100,000 inside. And they just, out of the blue, and I'd never met them before, and they'd never met the research work that we were doing before, they just decided, the daughter had decided that she wanted to give money to this particular bit of research work that we were doing. And that actually was the enabler of the papillomavirus vaccine, because that money was used to buy a piece of equipment which simply wasn't available in Australia otherwise at that time, which enabled us to do the basic science, if you like, which enabled the papillomavirus vaccine, the HPV vaccine.
Once a year we have a meeting with our children and grandchildren and James's wife, Sarah, and we allocated $1,500 to each of them to spend on a charity of their choice. And what we found was that it became a real bonding within the family, that we sat together, each person told about the charity that they were supporting and why they wanted to support it. And then we all went out and had lunch together. I mean, it was just a very a good bonding ceremony for us. We were finding that we had been a little bit isolated, and this was bringing us together. And the little children particularly became very excited about doing their projects. they did PowerPoints, and they had PowerPoints that had curtains that went up. And at the end, the paper fell on the floor, and it was really quite fun.
Can I just add that James's youngest child told his parents that there are 3 nights that she doesn't sleep through, only 3 nights that she doesn't sleep through the night. There's her birthday, there's Christmas Eve, and the night before the Goodman Foundation meeting. So they've really taken this to heart, and it is, to summarise it, we wanted a culture of giving in the Goodman family, and by having a foundation, I mean, it's not necessary to have a foundation, but by having a foundation, it can go into the next generation and the generation after that. And we think that being givers is good for the soul of the individual as well as good for the community.
How complex are family foundations to set up?
In the end, it's not particularly complex. It's a bit like a superannuation fund where you put money in and you can leave it there as long as you like, but you have to contribute. I think James will correct me, but I think you've got to give away 5% a year. Right. And but you can give away more if you wish to. But in our case, it's meant that the value of the fund has increased over time, and we can now make more significant gifts than we did before.
You've been directing a lot of effort, Caroline, to encouraging others to give as well. Can you tell me about the Not If, When campaign?
Yeah. Well, that's Ian and I are co-chair, or were co-chair. It's now officially come to an end. But we're co-chair of the first University of Queensland campaign for raising funds. And we actually did quite a lot of travel with a lot of overseas students now in the University of Queensland. So we were going all around the world, telling them about the campaign and what they could do, and just actually meeting the students, our ex-students, former students, the alumni, and just making sure they were connecting with each other and connecting with the university, and seeing what kind of needs they wanted, and what did they want from the university as graduates, and how could we help. And we've been doing that for the last 5 years, perhaps 6 years, 7 years.
It's interesting because if you live in the United States, there is an automatic assumption that if you get the benefit of a university education, you will continue to give back to the university to let the next generation get that education. Traditionally, Australia, like Europe, has not been particularly good at doing that. It's a pity because obviously the people who've got a bit of money can get to university one way or another, but there's a lot of people who could go to university and who simply can't because even if the government pays your fees in this country, you've still got to live. And if you're one of 6 kids out on a farm in rural Queensland, and you say, look, I'd really like to go to university and I'll be there for 4 years and it's going to cost this much money, and they just can't manage it. So we've been very keen to see the university take on this responsibility of providing scholarships for young kids who simply are clearly capable of making use of a university education, but simply can't afford it.
Well, I think it was about 10 or 11 years ago when we started the Goodman Foundation, where, as Meta has explained, the children and the grandchildren found a cause, had to support a cause and advocate for a cause that they believed in. But then Meta and I chose to support a course of marine science in Moreton Bay. And it was a very personal decision. And I didn't know what Meta was going to choose, but when she said, I want to support marine science, my little heart leapt, because that was what I wanted to support too. And Meta's always been very interested in the marine environment. She will look in a rock pool for half a day and talk to the animals in the rock pool. And I've always been a boatie and loved going out on the water and communing with nature. So it seemed a natural fit that we would support marine science.
When we first started, we said to the university, we're happy to give the money, and it wasn't a huge sum of money. We're happy to give the money, but we really don't want any kudos for it. It's just nice that we're able to help the students. And then it became, as we gave year by year and we increased our giving, we realised that if people didn't know we were giving, nobody else would give. And we felt that it was important, so we had to stand up and be counted, I suppose.
Sit on a stage at the powerhouse under bright lights, that's right. What is the benefit of discussing this side of your life, do you think? What do you hope the benefit to be?
Exactly as Meta said, if you don't say you give, nobody knows it's something that, it's actually quite a good thing to do, and you get a lot out of it as well. And
we used to give money anonymously at the beginning because I didn't really want to be seen to be out there doing that. And I've always felt that the most important thing you can give actually is time, because the people will remember and benefit from time more than they remember and benefit from money. But eventually we decided that if we didn't show we were doing this, then we weren't really encouraging other people who could think about doing it to do it as well, in whatever area that we were giving money. And it's this mixture of showing that you're really keen to put the effort into something, and then at the same time, if need be, back it with funding. And some things are much easier done with money. Others are much easier done just by talking about them and getting people to think about it.
We didn't have any money to give. We used to go, we were very supportive of the Lions in those days, and we used to go along to Indooroopilly and sell our cakes, and we spend hours there on a Saturday, and we'd write our Christmas cards while we were there, whatever. But it was the fact that we were actually doing it and going to the barbecues and helping, and that was a really good thing to do too.
Originally was the idea that the support would be financial and it would end at that level?
Well, we didn't anticipate that it would develop in the way that it did, let's put it that way. That, initially we thought we would give to, initially it was to master's students needing funding to complete their degree. And what we noticed was that it wasn't just the science that was being developed, it was the people. And a young man I happened to see present three times in 1 year. The first time he was terrible, he was hopeless. The next time he was okay, and the final time he was a professional scientist. And it got me. And so the personal development side of it is, to us, just as important as the science side of it. And we've furthered that now with supporting the Marine Students Association, and we technically, with stuff we help them, like microscopes and so forth. But most recently, we've observed that not all scientists are wonderful speakers like Ian, and we've formed an alliance with Toastmasters to give marine students, some marine students, a leg up in terms of presenting their story to the other scientists and the public.
There must be so many different stakeholders who've got involvement or got concern. There's scientists, there's boaties, there's Aboriginal owners, there's local government. How do you negotiate all of those different people and different interests? Is that an issue in philanthropy for you?
I think part of it is communication. There's a lot of knowledge about the bay, but very few people know about it. And some of it's quite interesting, like there's more species of coral in Moreton Bay than there are in the Caribbean. Well, nobody knows stuff like that. So we felt that it was important to let people know. And with more people knowing, more people become interested in preserving what we have. So we really tried to focus on that. And with that in mind, we funded a forum about Moreton Bay, which was, collated by Professor Tibbets, and he got all the people to speak, a very short speech on many different aspects of the bay. And at the end of that, we had the final day when all the presenters were talking in the audience, and we said, what should happen now? And they said we should band together and tell everyone about Moreton Bay. But when it came to writing the letter, no one would sign it. There was no point in John and Meta Goodman signing it. Who knew about us? The university didn't want to sign it. The universities didn't want to sign it. The local government people didn't want to sign it because it was impacting on their work. And that was when we thought maybe a Moreton Bay Foundation, similar to the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, might help bring all the people, the different communities together to then work together to preserve the bay.
John, one of your favourite pieces of advice around giving is an interesting one. You say push your giving away from June 30th. Why?
Well, what's the most miserable time of the year financially? Leading up to 30th of June, when you're having to dig out all those records and do your tax return and think about the terrible amount of tax, if you're lucky, that you've got to pay. So I suggest, I mean, everyone's got their own formula for giving, but one of my suggestions is that take your giving away from 30th June. Don't have that conversation where you say, what do we give to this year, dear? Oh, let's look at what we did last year and do it again this year, right? Take it away and have a more considered approach to it and think about what's going to give you pleasure in doing in terms of giving.
It's interesting that you use the word pleasure, because I think there's still the common assumption that it might be a good thing to do, but it's not really a very enjoyable thing to do.
Sarah, I know you've interviewed Hugh Mackay a number of times, and his approach to giving is that really it's I don't want to put it too strongly, but for him it's an act of self-flagellation, and I think it's not going to sell people on giving, and it's not our experience with giving. We've obtained enormous pleasure out of supporting the causes that we do and getting involved more and more, even though it wasn't our original intention. But I think there's enormous pleasure to be derived from giving, and if people can discover that, they'll give, and next year they're likely to give a little bit more. So, yes, the pleasure of giving.
What about the fear that people have that, I mean, anyone in this room, and I'm sure they're here who are financial consultants, probably encounter of, if I give, I won't have enough. That kind of scarcity mentality. How do you counter that, or how do you respond to that?
Well, Meta and I are Goodman clients, and all the Goodman clients know the roadmap where James or Brad or the advisor talks about what's important about money. And for nearly everyone says first up, well, having security, having enough, being able to pay the bills. And that's a sort of a basic instinct. And then they start talking about helping others, helping their family, which is at a different level. And then finally, we talk about getting sort of self-actualisation or pleasure out of what we've done with our money. And in my experience, in the many years I was advising and now as a customer, I have found that it's not having things that makes people ultimately satisfied, it's helping.
Look, I mean, you can give in different ways. As I say, if you haven't got any money, you can still give time. And there's so many places where a little bit of a helping hand is actually as valuable as a bit of money. But if you can add money in as well, it always seems to help the process, there's no doubt. And I think that you're absolutely right that keeping it away from the 30th of June and sort of, I'm doing this because it will save my tax bill or something like that. It's the wrong reason for doing it. Yeah. We don't give it for the 30th of June either. We do it over the Christmas holidays when we've got time to think about what we want to do and plan it. And then the people get a nice surprise in the new year.
I got the impression from all four of you that where you started in giving and philanthropy was pretty unremarkable. It was quite unintentional. So you're here tonight getting us all enthusiastic and motivated to go away and do something good. How might you approach it then if you're one of us wanting to do it more intentionally? Where do we get started?
I think you have to start with what you're interested in. As this has already been said, I mean, you will be much more motivated to do something if it's something that you feel will be useful, but something you also are very interested in yourself. And there's such a wide variety of places that you can put your effort or money, if you have it, into particular activities, that there's almost certainly going to be something where it will fit. If it's helping disabled people or just setting up a men's shed for people who are retired, there's lots of different things you can do. So, and you can join in and be part of it, and that's actually quite important. I mean, it's not just the giving, it's the giving and being part of it that makes it good from my point of view, at least. I'm sure also from my colleagues here. And so pick the thing you're really interested in that you can see you can do something to help, and then let it go from there.
In the trade, it's called organising your giving, and I think that's a terrible expression, Sarah, and you're an English major graduate. I'd ask you or any of the audience to come up with a better expression when you decide to make your giving more serious. But every family is different, and that's what we discovered when we investigated. We did a thorough investigation of what we should do. But the first thing we came up with was to involve your family, and we've discussed that already, and that's been very successful. Just look at James. The next thing what we did was to get advice, because if you want to expand your giving, it seems like a very daunting prospect, and you worry about all sorts of things like, will the kids think I'm spending their inheritance, right? Well, the people who've organised their giving have been through that, and they might have some suggestions. For example, there are other issues, like the technical issues. And what we found to be beneficial, and not all people want to do it this way, but we found it was good to consolidate much of our giving in one area, or a few areas, so that you get involved in that issue, that charity, that cause, and it makes it more interesting. You can go to the annual general meeting or read the annual report, or even go on the board if you want to. And the final thing that I would say to anyone, set out with a mindset of having fun. This doesn't have to be that serious. You can really enjoy what you're doing, but it's kind of a mindset thing that if you go in thinking it's going to be miserable and you're going to hate parting with the money, that's what's going to happen.
This isn't really a question, nor is it a statement. It's just a thinking point. But I was very taken with what Ian said about the unexpected gift of $100,000. That was very, very fundamental in making a great change. I'm also very taken with what the Goodmans have said about involving their grandchildren, which we try to do, with small sums, $1,500, and everyone thinks of what to do with it. What I sometimes ask myself is there a right way and a wrong way? What is the best way? Is it better to put it, combine everything and go kapow and really make a big difference to somebody's project, or is it not that there necessarily has to be a right or a wrong way? I just want to throw that into the mix as a, how we all approach it.
Well, again, I'll start a conversation there. There's two different aspects to that. One is that there are organisations out there where the more broad support they're getting from the community, the better it works for them. Meals on Wheels would be a sort of example of that. And giving a little bit from a lot of people actually makes the whole thing more real for the people that are involved. But the big donation that makes it a substantial difference works extremely well as well, if you can get the right advice about where to put it. But if you're going to give a big gift for something, it's notwithstanding the fact that I'm not sure that the lion and his daughter actually did any homework before they came and gave us the cheque for $100,000, other than to check that we actually were legit and were doing something. But I think that if you're going to give a very big gift, you should actually do a little bit of homework first and find out that it is going to be substantially transformative. Because you could give it in a place where it wasn't used well. Because, an organisation which can handle a $200 gift well doesn't necessarily handle a $200,000 gift, except to the same level of good outcome.
And I think it's also important to work out that it's actually going to be used for what you want it to be used for. And to make sure you'll get that feedback and you know it's going to go there.
Well, just before James comes to conclude, unfortunately I can't off the top of my head think of a better term than organisational giving, but I'm sure there is one. But instead I've got just a few lines from the poet Robert Frost, from his poem The Gift Outright, which goes, "Something we were withholding made us weak, until we found out that it was ourselves we were withholding from our land of living." So thank you, and please join me in thanking these lovely guests this evening. Thanks, Nita.
So have you noticed sometimes when you come along to an event such as this, and you get all inspired and you have some great ideas, and then you get home and somehow life rolls on and the inspiration sort of falls by the wayside? Well, not tonight. So if you have been inspired here tonight, I'm going to help you out with that. I have here a list of actions. So actions that I've pre-prepared and I've added to after hearing the stories we've heard tonight. But really these are things that will help you to move forward if you have been inspired and if you want to take some action and do good. This will help you. And I'll send a copy of this list to everyone. So on this list, there's a couple I was going to mention. First one, talk to your spouse. So on the way home, or set up a coffee date with them. If you do good together, it can be more meaningful. So I'd ask you to really think about that. Hold a family meeting. So, a shared doing of good can be a way to pass on family values. It can be something positive to focus on. It can be a way to, if you want to do it for a long period of time, it can do that in perpetuity. So hold a family meeting is a good action. And the last action on this list, which is not the full list, is talk to Goodman Private Wealth. So I'm very happy, and Brad, my partner Brad, who isn't doing much tonight, is very happy to talk to you about your situation. So whether that's financial or non-financial, we've got a tremendous amount of experience in this area, and we can talk to you about what's important, help you along the way, help you find the best pathway for you. Thank you for coming along.